Después de varios años de no presentar una novela, Auster regresa a México en el contexto de la Feria Internacional del Libro de Guadalajara para presentar 4, 3, 2, 1. Big novel. Thank you very much, Mr. Auster.
Thank you.
For presenting this novel, 4, 3, 2, 1. I understand this is a crossroads between family, friends, friendship, reflections with death, and even New York. I mean, we can see on the cover a boy who might suggest Mr. Auster.
Certainly not me. No, the book is about the story of one person's life from birth to early adulthood. And it takes place in the same years as my birth and early adulthood. But the thing about this character is that instead of telling the story just once, I tell it 4 times.
A reflection on existence.
Certainly, without question, yes.
What autobiographical elements do you integrate here?
I think the autobiographical element that is at the root of the entire book, however, which is presented in 2 different ways in the book, none of them exactly the real story of what happened to me, but this is something that happened to me when I was 14 years old. I've written about it before in a series of little stories called Why Write, which is part of a book called The Red Notebook. And this is the story of how, when I was 14, I was sent to a summer camp in New York State. And 20 boys and 2 of the counselors went off on a hike in the woods. We got caught in a very big storm, electric storm. And as we were trying to get away from the trees to go into a clearing, we were crawling under a barbed wire fence, single file. And the boy immediately in front of me, as he was halfway through, with his back directly under the fence, was electrocuted when lightning struck the barbed wire and killed him. Now this, I think, is the fundamental experience of my life. It's haunted me all these years. This was 1961 when that happened. And that story is buried inside the very center of this book.
Have you taken this anecdote about the guy electrocuted, to write something else? How do you explain the fact that you are taking this experience now?
I can't explain it except to say that as I've gotten older now, questions of childhood have become more important to me. I've been thinking back about the past more than I used to. And I realized that I wanted to plunge into what it feels like to be a 6-year-old, as opposed to an 8-year-old, as opposed to an 11-year-old. All the mutations we go through in essentially the first 20 years of our lives. It is the most hectic, adventurous, beautiful, horrible time of a person's life. And so that's the period I wanted to concentrate on, because I think of the book as essentially a book about human development. In the United States, in my boyhood, baseball was the #1 obsession of all the boys, and even girls played. We played softball together, baseball among the boys, so that school would end, and then we would all run off to a park, or when we were very small, to someone's yard, and play baseball until it was time for dinner. This was it. And it was a different world with no supervision from parents. And we had our own rules. We had our own disputes. We would settle them among ourselves. And I look upon those early years of my life as a kind of golden period of being free and enjoying the companionship, the comradeship of these other boys playing the game, everyone playing hard and enjoying it. And but kids don't play baseball in America that way anymore. It's gone. It's finished.
You also witnessed a change of a very different America. America has changed a lot, I believe, from your childhood and the post-war. years. And now it's totally different America, an America that conceives itself in a very different way, that writes itself in a very different way. What changes do you notice in the way America has changed, in the way the world has changed? Because we have to talk about globalization somehow.
Well, I think what I would rather talk about is how America has not changed. And I think having lived inside this novel, which most of which takes place 50 years ago, but of course, while I was living in that past, I was living also in the present, how similar these two eras are and how divided America is, again, in similar kinds of ways, and how racism remains a deep drumbeat in the culture, and we can never, ever get rid of it because we're not willing as a culture to have the big open conversation about it.
What about literature artists? Is there some sort of obligation towards this thing? How can writers in general and writing in general, say journalists or writers, can contribute to this change in the world and
Well,
defend?
I think journalists and writers, say novelists, are two different species. They don't overlap. A writer who writes novels is responsible only to writing his books in the best possible way he or she can. That is our job. The job of a journalist is of utmost importance when we're talking about the here and now, the everyday world that we live in. And I feel that we need good journalists now more than ever. The more complex the world becomes, the more confusing it becomes because of the internet, because of this proliferation of information, both true and false. We need people with steady hearts and steady minds and clear personalities to be able to pierce beyond the surface of what governments are saying and get to the truth. I think our immediate future depends on good journalism.
Thank you very much for this beautiful interview, Mr. Auster.